Hello viewers, welcome to another episode of Dexter's Lab. A few of you will have been expecting this video because I know some of you at least look at my Facebook page, and I have been posting up that I've been working on my Quantel Ramcorder, so that's what this video is going to be all about. So I've finally got this working. I was going to do some live streams on it, but the problem was it was all a bit protracted, and you might have spent hours watching me make no progress at all, so I decided to keep it off camera. I'll go through some of the things that I did in this video anyway, just so you can sort of grasp what's been going on, but it is all working, thankfully. And as you can see, we have animation on the Quantel paint box. So what I'm going to do first is just talk about the Ramcorder, what it dates from, what it's used for, and how it works. And then what we'll do, we'll turn all this off, we'll open it up, I'll show you the insides, because there are some aspects of it which are just like you'll see when I take it to pieces, and I'll run through sort of some of the details about how it works internally, and then we'll plug it all back together, and I'll actually show you it in action. So the Quantel Ramcorder, as far as I know, was released by Quantel in around about 1988, 89, that sort of time frame. They registered the trademark in 1988 anyway, so but I suspect because there was some fluctuations in RAM prices in that time, there might have been a bit of a delay, because RAM prices went absolutely astronomical just around about the time that they were bringing this out. It might have delayed things a little bit. And unfortunately I don't have any idea on pricing on it, but it wouldn't have been cheap at all. This uses a significant amount of RAM, and RAM prices back then were pretty high. They did drop very quickly in the early 1990s, but still they wouldn't have been cheap at all. This machine, probably as much as a regular Quantel paint box, possibly even more, I have no idea. The paint box, I believe that they were about £70,000, so the Ramcorder could easily have been the same as that again, possibly even more. So the Ramcorder is a add-on option for the paint box. It allows the user to have access to 323 frames of PAL video, which are totally non-linear and RAM based, to allow you to do animations. Because the paint box only works on still images, actually it's painting functions anyway, there is no mechanism in there to do any kind of video. So what the Ramcorder does is bolts on and gives you a video store to allow you to do short animation clips. Basically how this works is the paint box renders animation frames and saves them to the Ramcorder in non-real time, and then the Ramcorder can then play it back in real time. So that gives you your video output that gets used for other things. So this probably would have been used for things like program intros, maybe news features and stuff, where you just have like short little clips of animation. So the Ramcorder is a standalone box. It has 3 connections which connect up to the paint box, and power input, of course. We have an RS-232 cable, which is for control, so the paint box can command the Ramcorder to do whatever it needs, and we have a video input and a video output. The video in question here is actually SDI, so it's just serial digital video. There is also CCIR 656 outputs and inputs on it as well. That would have been used with the older paint boxes that had the parallel digital video. So it's not actually used on this one, because thankfully my paint box is serial and it's SDI, so that works quite well. So we have digital input A coming from the Ramcorder, and digital output A going into the Ramcorder. So that also gives us digital output B to connect to my monitor, which is also SDI, thankfully. So as I said, we've just got basic input and output into the Ramcorder and a control cable. So that is pretty simple connections. Right, let's get this all switched off and I'll show you the inside. Right, that's a bit quieter now it's turned off. Okay, the system chassis is all the same as the V-Series, or almost anyway. There's a couple of fans here. We've got a large power supply, connections for the mains input and stuff down here. And then we have the the system boards here. The back plane, as far as I know, is different to the V-Series paint box. It's specific for the ramcorder. So the two top cards here and here, this one is called IO Process and this one is called Address. We've got a number of cables, so basically what's actually happening here, we have a parallel control cable plugging into the address board, and we have an RS-232 cable going to port B and another cable up here going to another port. I'm not entirely sure what that's used for. So it looks like the address card is has the main CPU on, and the IO process card is basically just video input and video output. The address card, as I just said, has the processor on. It's not particularly powerful. It is just a 6809 CPU on there. There's a small amount of EEPROM to actually run it. That's only a 32K EEPROM. It's actually split into two, with 2 copies of the firmware, so it's actually only using less than 16K of that EEPROM to actually run the whole thing. So there's a couple of RS-232 drivers and various other little bits. There's a little bit of RAM on here as well. I believe there is actually a diagnostics menu in this, but I've never been able to find it. So maybe at some point, now I've got it working, I'll start probing around and see if I can find that diagnostics menu. I know it's in there because I have seen it in the dump of the EEPROM. You can do various diagnostics things, checking the RAM stores and stuff like that, so I'll be really interested to find that. The IO process, there's various custom logic chips on here and lots of 7.4 series stuff. And then we've got 2 cables coming out for the parallel digital video, and there's 2 small daughter boards on here which convert the parallel data into serial data for the SDI outputs. So there's a couple of boards on here with video serializers on, and these 2 coaxes are just the input and output SDI from the rear panel. Right, so how does this actually work? Well, you have 4 store cards which are in the back here. I'll show you those in a moment. They have around about 268 megabytes of RAM on them, and then we have the CPU card and a video output card. So I think what is actually happening here, because the CPU on this has nowhere near enough power to be able to generate the SDI outputs, it basically just instructs the IO process card to look at a particular portion of memory and then output all that data to the video outputs. So it basically just maneuvers what I suspect is probably like a window on the RAM stores, just pointing to the right place to pick up the particular frame that you want to display or record to. So that's why this has quite a slow processor on. For what it's doing, it doesn't seem to be that particularly powerful, but then it doesn't really need to be. It just needs to read the serial port and then just tell this card to point to a particular area of the store. So as I mentioned previously, the RAM prices back in 1988 were fluctuating all over the place. There was a huge spike in the prices, then they dropped, and so I suspect that probably did affect the pricing and availability on this ramcorder because, well, they just used so much of it. So let's just show you one of the store boards. There is actually 4 of these boards in this machine. So yeah, ready for a treat. So check that out. It's just absolutely jammed full of these are all 1 megabit drams. They're all in zip packages, which is the ones that stand up. You can see there, hopefully. These boards weigh quite a bit. There's actually flex as you actually handle them, so I try not to take these out very often. And obviously you can see on the back that's a lot of drill holes. I've actually worked this out, and each one of these boards has 512 1 megabit drams on, and each one of these boards has over 10,000 drill holes in them. So not only the RAM would have been pretty expensive, but it must have cost quite a bit just to make the PCB. So we've got the main store at the top there, then just at the bottom there's obviously some buffers and probably some stuff to do refreshing of those drams as well. So that's one of those. And of course the other ones are pretty much identical. Oh yeah. So these are actually using it's a Fujitsu part MB81C1000, 120 nanosecond. So if anybody can actually find out the actual price of these drams back in the day, these ones are dated 1989. Be interesting to work out how much all of those would have cost. There is a total of 2,048 of these chips in the RAM-corder. So yes, unfortunately, this is showing its age. Yeah, you got to think today you could easily do this with an FPGA and an SD card. But I just love this old tech for just being absolutely bonkers crazy at the time. Anyway, let's put this back together and I'll show you it actually connected up to the paint box, and we'll do some quick animation. Right, we've got this all set up and running now. It's all configured, obviously. So once it is actually configured on the system, with a couple of extra options you get, which is the RAM-corder option. So if we just click that, we can see here we've got a timeline control with a few extra jog shuttle functions. So this timeline at the bottom here is showing the entire duration of the RAM-corder and the current frame that we're on, which is number 1 of 323 frames. On NTSC you get slightly less, I think it's 300 frames for NTSC. There's a couple of options here called result and background. What these allow you to do is divide up the 323 frames of the RAM-corder into clips, because you'll see in a moment what you can actually do is read frames from the RAM-corder, write some animation to it, and then write it back to a different location in the RAM-corder. So this allows you to have like workspaces within the RAM-corder. It's quite a neat function. I'll show you those in just a moment. So if we go over to paste up, what we're going to do is actually do a really basic animation, write it to the RAM-corder just so you can see how this works. So what I'm going to do is just go into painting and load this background that I've got prepared, sort of grid pattern thing. I'm going to paste up and cut the entire picture. So now we've got that image as a paste up item, so I can just move that and you can see the background behind, so I'm just going to wipe that just to make it black. So now we only have the paste up item. Set that back to where it was. And what we're going to do is create a really basic animation to this, write it to the RAM-corder, and then I'll add some extra animation on top of that to show you how the compositing works. So if we go to the animation, what we're going to do is have the result and background to be frame 1 to frame 100. So as you can see here, it started to divide that RAM-corder up into different sections, and I can just scroll along here, and this top line is the actual clip. So the animation is going to be 100 frames long. We go back to paste up and click on keyframes. This allows us to add some keyframes in to actually create the animation between frames 1 and 100. So it's really, really simple. So if we go to frame 50 and change the position, the size, instead of size 1 we're going to go to size 0.5, so it's half the size. Got a lot of garbage in the background there, just wipe that off. And then at frame 75 we'll put a spin 1 and 1. Now if we drag the timeline back, we can see the animation there, and then between frame 75 and 100 we'll then fade this out to 25%. So what we can do now is click on the Try It option, and that will just do a preview of the animation. And then once we're happy with it, we can then render that out to the camcorder. So this is now going to render those frames in full resolution, and once it's rendered each frame, it then write that single frame out to the camcorder, move on to the next frame, and go through all 100 frames. So it's really important to remember that the Paintbox and the camcorder work together completely digitally, so there's no loss at all between the Paintbox and the camcorder. It means you can create really complex composites. You know, you can create a set of animation that's written to the camcorder, and then you can bring it back and add more on top of it and change things. So because it's completely non-lossy, you can composite things as much as you like, which is what I'm going to show you on this one. So once this one's finished, which won't be long, so once that's finished, we can go back to animation, and we can actually see the final animation there. If I just play this once, I'm just going to click here and it'll go full screen and play the animation. So that is stored in frames 1 to 100 of the camcorder. Now what I can do is go to Paste Up and create some new animations. So if I just clear off all those keyframes, set this back to original, and what we'll do, we'll create another different animation here. So if we change the size to 0.75, create a new set of keyframes, and what we'll do, we'll just move this up here, change the style to 50%, which is the transparency basically, and we shall just move that over there and move it up here, and on frame 100 we'll move it down over there, and you can see here it's creating a stripy string, showing you the path that that object's going to take. So what I'm going to do is just wipe the background, just to make sure it's black, and turn on background. So what this is now going to do is load the frame from the camcorder, place it in the background, and then animate over the top of it. So as I'm pulling through the timeline here, you can see it's pulling the background frames from the camcorder and then putting the new animation on top. So what I'm going to do is just change the size of this as well. And and should put some spin on it as well. Let's do spin 2, so I'll spin twice in its animation. So let's try it. Okay, happy with that. So we now do it. So what this is now doing, every single frame it pulls the old frame out of the camcorder and then does the animation over the top and then writes it back to the camcorder. So this is how you sort of create the composite effects, and of course you can combine all of this with stencils and any of the other functions within the Paintbox as well. So that's that done, so we can now go back to the animation and actually see the final bit. So we play that, you can see there it's all combined into one single clip, and we can keep adding more and more stuff onto that if we want to. So, and we can actually use this also as a source for a new clip to write in the other frames of the camcorder as well. So you can use this as a source, and you can actually save all these images here. You can actually save those as static images as a sequence of files that you can actually reload back in later on if you wanted to as well. So one of the other features that you can do with the camcorder is rotoscoping. Rotoscoping is where you basically manually draw things onto each frame individually, like cell animation. So if we go to the painting menu, I should just go back to the animation. You can see here we've got options here called buy and sell. Selling takes the image that's in the Paintbox and sells it to the frame number that's in the camcorder. So sell would sell this frame to frame 1 in the camcorder, and buy would buy frame 2 from the camcorder and bring it into the Paintbox. So there are actually some automated features on the handheld rat, as Quantel call it. I'm going to the painting menu. I can actually draw on here. So I can actually draw 1 and then click, and that'll bring in frame 2. And I can actually go through and actually retouch individual frames if I wanted to. So obviously you can do this with live video if you wanted to, because you don't have to have this generated animation in the camcorder. You can actually load live video into it as well, so you can actually do proper rotoscoping. It's certainly something I'm going to have to look at getting, is a HDMI to SDI converter, so I can actually start putting some real live video into the camcorder and have a play around with some rotoscoping, which would be kind of fun to do. So if I scroll back, you can see there that we've got the frames there that I've edited. So that's pretty much it. That's sort of a bit of a brief introduction into the camcorder. So really what remains now is for me to sort of start playing around and learning all the little tricks and techniques to actually generate some interesting bits of animation. I'd definitely want to try and use some of this for intros into my YouTube videos and things like that. I think it'd be a quite cool thing to do, to have proper vintage hardware generating some vintage looking TV graphics. Okay, I hope you found that interesting. There'll definitely be more on this in the future. Keep an eye out on my Facebook page, because I do occasionally post stuff up on there, things that I'm doing, so go and check that out. The links are all in the description as always. Okay, thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.